lot of meets at the same place, and I was always impressed with how not only did how her athletes ran, but how she treated her athletes, and that said a lot about what really was important. And you guys know that this is a vehicle for learning lots of lessons beyond just running. And she and I were just sharing some pleasantries a minute ago, and that came up as one of the things that she mentioned. But I always remember her athletes being willing to do their absolute best for her at meets, and unfortunately I wasn't ever able to catch many of them, so they were of high quality. Some things that I know about her, she can expand on these, but she was a 5-time world cross-country champion, 5 in a row I think, right? A 2-time Olympian in 1968 in Mexico City and in 1972 in Munich. Yes. And then several times has been a part of national team coaching staffs, which means if you were the Olympic team or the World Championship team, she would have been your coach on that venture. So it's incredible to have an amazing, humble woman here in our presence. And I kind of asked if we could start with one of her exploits early on. I think this is in Vancouver, isn't it?
Yes.
This is in Vancouver. And this is a first ever in the world. So this is an indoor race, and she's the first to go under 5 minutes in the mile. So
to watch is wearing number 114, the little dark glass on the inside lane. Roberto Pico of the Don Mills Track Club. Ron Delaney, have you talked to Lloyd Principal about this girl?
I have, and I understand she did a time trial for 3/4 mile this week, 3 minutes 27 seconds. So it would appear that her capabilities could have her do a world record for us here tonight. I wonder, is she going to try for the record? Because certainly it would appear that she has the ability to break this record if she goes first.
The world record listed is 5 minutes 4 seconds. This is a new event in Canada. This is a relatively new event any place in the world, isn't it?
Yes, women's mining only came into vogue about 5 or 6 years ago, and indeed very few women break 5 minutes for the mile outdoors, so if we get a 5 minutes mile here tonight, it'll be a tremendous achievement.
Pat Mills of the Richmond Track and Field Club in British Columbia breaks fast out in front. Notice the peculiar arm motion of Roberto Pico wearing number 114, who is running second. It reminds me a little bit of Bruce Kidd, Ron.
Yes, it's, I would consider it a fault personally, and, I think you should get rid of this bad habit. She obviously loses a little bit of balance by letting her right arm hang there. However, she is an extremely relaxed runner, so how much damage it's doing her performances, I can't really say. As you can see, she's a magnificently relaxed athlete, just seems to glide along.
Doris, that's you in third, isn't it?
Pico now moving out in front. Remember, this is 11 laps out of the track. Pat Mills, who took the lead right off the start, falling back a little bit. And now we have a new second-place runner moving up as they're coming up to complete their third lap, wearing number 146, Doris Brown of the Falcon. She's the girl with the glasses on. And Roberto Pico is well out in front as the field is well spread now. They've completed 3 laps. They have 8 laps to go. Roberto Pico out in front. And I would gather, Ron, with her strategy, with her speed and her stamina, is to just get out in front and stay there.
Yes, I'd be inclined to think personally that it's really a one-runner race. I don't believe these other girls are in her class. This American girl, Doris Brown, is staying with her. However, I doubt if she can last this hot pace.
You notice 7 laps remaining to go, and Roberto Pico is maintaining her lead as the tail-end girls come by. Roberto Pico out in front with the American girl, Doris Brown, so far staying with her. Is this a race that Europeans, who usually are so wonderful at distance, are good in, Ron?
Yes, it's a European speciality. In fact, the outdoor world record holder is an English girl, Diane Leather, and she set this record around 1955, so she was way ahead of her time.
Roberto Pico getting a good race here from Doris Brown, who is staying right with her, and they're coming up 2:29 for the half, and how does that time strike?
That's very good pace. It's very even. It means she hasn't run her first half mile too fast. She's still well within world record time here.
2:29 for the half mile. Roberto Pico out in front. Doris Brown staying with her. It is strictly a two-girl race, but Doris Brown is perhaps surprising a few people so far, Ron, in staying this close to Roberto Pico.
Yes, she certainly is, and I know that Roberto Pico took a look behind her there to see how close Brown was on her. I think she's a little worried to have Brown staying with her, and indeed we can really get a race here now if Brown happens to take to the front. You'll notice Pico seems determined to keep her back there, so we'll certainly have a fast time in store here.
And of course, this is a brand new indoor track. The curves on this track are unique. It's the first time that this indoor track has been used. And now forging in front is Doris Brown. Roberto Pico is in second place. The other girl you just saw there has been lapped. There are your leaders in white. Doris Brown of the United States from the Falcon Club. Roberto Pico, wearing number 114, is running second, and they have to go high on the boards, Ron, to get by us. That's the thing, was to let people by.
They do usually, but the runners, in fairness to them, wouldn't know unless an official was signaling to them to move out. It looks like Brown's race here. She's certainly going like a bomb.
Brown is now forging farther and farther out in front of Pico as she's coming up for her gun lap. She laps again, lapping number 68 by Tittler, another Vancouver runner, and Roberto Pico is falling farther and farther behind as Doris Brown of the Falcons of the United States gets the gun. Now Roberto Pico is taking her last run at her, but there is your leader hitting the turn, and this crowd here at the Agrodome is cheering her on. It is Doris Brown from the Falcon Club who took over with less than 2 laps to go and is surging farther and farther out in front all the time, putting on a great sprint. She came around high on the turn and she hit that finish line, and she could be awfully close to that world record run.
Oh, I certainly think so. I won't be a little surprised if she's broken the world record. That was a marvelous judged race, a marvelous display of pace running. You'll note she wasn't at all fatigued towards the end of her race. She still had good form and no strain whatsoever.
And there is little Roberto Pico, who led for the first 8 laps of this race, but was beaten by Doris Brown in the women's 1 mile. We'll wait for the official time. For BC next, UBC. And the award for the outstanding female athlete of this meet, the award will be made by Dr. Doug Clement, the president of the International, goes to the amazing Doris Brown of the Falcons, who set a new world record here in the women's mile run. There she is. A world record for the women's mile. Doris Brown of the Falcons.
So Doris, they gave you a tea set.
You know, in those days, well, first of all, they said that there'd been a mile race since a long time ago, but we could never have them. And the mile wasn't in the Olympics or anything. So this was the first chance I think we had to run a mile. And then it was indoors. And my first indoor race too. But if you notice, this is a long time ago, and if you saw the pole vault pit and the high jump pit, I get a kick out of watching this because they have the big chunks of foam in the pits, you know. And Perry O'Brien was the shot putter that you saw there, and he was very famous. He was the world record holder for I don't know how many years. And Ron Delaney, who's narrating this, he had the mile record. I don't know how long. Maybe he still has it indoors.
Indoors for Canada? I don't know.
No, he was from England, Ireland, I don't know,
Yeah.
somewhere. But so
He didn't give you much credit there, though.
No.
Yeah, you kind of surprised him.
Well, I don't think women were really known because we weren't really in any meets. I mean, like the tea set here was really a great gift because, like in the Portland indoor, I think I got a dozen roses, and the men got, you know, televisions and all these kind of things. So the tea set was really funny. I gave it to my mother. She didn't really even want it, so we gave it to our church. But that was okay. I'm sure all of you feel the same too, but what you win isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it's nice to get a prize, but you know, it's really what you gain from seeing benefits from your training. And I have to say too about this race, you know, we don't have that much snow around here. But that was a time when we had a lot of snow. Like the week before this meet, there was a lot of snow. And so we'd never run a race a mile. And so I was training at my pace. But there was snow all over, and my coach, Dr. Furman, got out and he shoveled all the snow off the inside lane of the track so that we could do some pace work. So I ran my quarters, and I think I was supposed to do them in 70, 75, something like that. 75, I guess. That would have been a 5-minute mile. And I think Diana Leather's record was like 5:05 or something. And I think my time was 4:52 maybe, something like that. So it was good. But I was just finishing this race thinking, boy, I did a good job. I ran my pace.
Yeah.
Because these tracks then were 11 laps to the mile, and you had no idea where you were. You know? My coach was out there saying, slow down, don't pass yet, don't pass yet. But you know, you come to a place in the race where you say, you know, this is just too slow, I gotta go. I hope you've all had that experience of feeling like, yes, I want to go. It doesn't always happen, you know, not too often, but once in a while you have that kind of an opportunity. So this, I think there are two, people often ask, you know, what were your best memories of your career? And this one, and then about the same time, in March, I think this was a little earlier, women didn't get to run cross country in the World Championship until that time. The men had had a world championship for like 100 years. And so the first one was in Wales, and I got to go with my coach, and no other women from the U.S. wanted to go because we had to pay our own way. So I think one other girl went. And so we ran there. Of course, it was just like this. Nobody really knew who we were. And so got out there and won that by a long ways. And we thought, oh, good, now the U.S. will pay our way to the World Championship. It was really exciting to win that first one because all the men who were in there were really famous men. I knew who they were, and they were so nice. They thought, you know, they treated me so well. And, you know, it's like around here, you know, the male athletes were okay. They were treated you well. But other people, like running around Green Lake, you know, they'd push you in the lake or throw things at you or something. Women were not the big deal in those days. So you gals, you know, it's come a long ways, and I hope you know. I think of it as being kind of funny. And to me, a challenge is good. You know, things that come too easy aren't that great. But when you have to work for something and it takes a long time, that's when you really feel the privilege and you know you're doing something worthwhile.
And ladies, excuse me for interrupting, Doris, but I want to make sure that it's not lost on the ladies that in large part you have the opportunity to do what you're doing alongside the guys because of people like Doris.
Right.
So.
And I have to tell you too that, you know, Title IX was a big deal for women, and I helped with that. I had the privilege of helping getting the longer races too, because I was the first woman elected to the IAAF, which is our international governing body. And you know, first I don't know, a year or so, they sent me the meeting notices about a month after the meetings. But the men on that committee were people that I had known because we ran at the same time. And so once, you know, I really had the privilege of being on the long distance committee, the road racing and cross country committee. And that was where we were able to really do the work to get the marathon and the 3K and the 400-meter hurdles and the longer races for women. So then in 1984, I was Olympic coach for the distance races from the U.S., and that was the year that we had the marathon, and Joan Benoit won it. Those are the things that I think, for me, I found are far more rewarding than what you do in a race, you know.
And just as a note, it's been 30 years since that first women's marathon trials in Olympia, Washington.
That's right,
Yeah,
the first one
yeah.
was here in
And
Washington
they're
State.
celebrating the 30th anniversary here in a month or so.
Yeah, Joan is coming out, and they're going to name a park for her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I realize this is 2 times ago your birth date when these things happen. You know, it's like ancient history. But I really have the privilege of living through that time, you know, from when there was nothing to when you have, you know, you have the opportunity to, you know, to do what you want in sport, basically.
Doris, it sounds like some of the men on the committees maybe thought women were second class at the time. But you said that the men that you ran with here were
Yeah.
Were they
You
gentlemen?
know, yes, they were. In fact, when I went to college, at SPU, first of all, in high school, there was no sport for women. And when I went to college, there was no college sport for women. But the coach at SPU said, well, if the guys will let you, you can run with them. I don't coach women. So I ran with the guys, and I really had a bad first year because they were really nice to me, but I felt like I didn't want them to think that I was just a loafer or something. So I tried to stay with them and do all the workouts they did. And I wasn't prepared to do that kind of hard work. I probably was born stronger than some people. And I had done a lot of running on my own. In those days, though, a lot of running wasn't how you trained. In those days, you did intervals. And I just loved to run. I think about the time I learned to walk, I started running. And the neighbor said, you should put that girl on a leash. So I always loved to run,
Because girls weren't supposed to do that,
I
right?
mean, even when I was a baby, I just started running. We lived on a farm that was on the waterfront, and we had about 25 acres of woods, and we had a farm that was a flower farm. My parents raised chrysanthemums, sold them to florists. So I grew up in a very special place and very perfect for a distance runner. So when kids rode their bikes and their horses, I was running with them. And if I wanted to visit somebody 3 miles down the beach, I did that. In the mornings, I just got up and I ran in the morning after I fed the chickens, And
Did your chores, right?
yeah, nobody did that, but I just loved to do it. And so, at the time, I didn't know that was training. So, and when I started out running in high school, it was I was working on a playground. And the kids were going through a little meet in Tacoma. I lived in the harbor. And I was young enough to be in the race, and the longest race was 75 yards. There was a long jump too, that was great. But, so then a man who was there wanted to start, he felt that women should have opportunities. So he started a club. He was a Canadian, by the way. All my good stuff happened in Canada. But he started this club, and his knowledge of it was, for the 400, he'd get out on the starting line and feed us a donut on the starting line. So you can
Wait
see,
a second, I don't, he fed you a
he
donut on the starting
tried to
line?
make us eat a donut on the starting line. Energy for this race, I mean, we had no help. So the reason I tell you this is because about a year after that, the 800 was in the Olympics for the first time for women. Before that, 200 meters was the longest race in the Olympics for women since 1934, I think, 36, something like that. And they took it out of the race, out of the Olympics for women because it said women, got sick and fell down and didn't run well. And it's documented in pictures that the women were fine after their race, and a lot of men fell down and were sick after their race. But you don't hear that part. So the thing that's been hard for the men is anything that women gain, men lose. And so it's not like the guys are out there saying, women shouldn't do these things. But the powers that be aren't, they weren't happy to add women. So when Title IX came along, that kind of changed it. But
So you made the Olympics in 1968.
68 and
And
72.
In
800 meters, and then 72, the 1500 was added. Yeah. So those were the longest races. It wasn't until 84 that anything, the longer races were added. But I wanted to tell you, though, the men were always fine with me training with them. And until this day, even at the AAU meetings, when the women wanted to add triple jump, the powers that be didn't want women to have the triple jump, and the men voted it in for us. They were the ones that, so guys have been supportive of women. I want to tell you that for you guys, because I know you've been supportive of the girls on your team too. And since I coached both men and women at SPU, since our team was both men and women together, I can say that I think the benefits of having the opportunity for guys and girls to be together on a team is really great. And I hope you've experienced that too. I hope you've found that. The support that you can give each other, and share, because, we're the ones who understand each other, who know the lifestyle. And running really is a microcosm of life, what you do as an athlete is really what's going to happen in your life. Because I'm sure I can say for all of you here that that when you put a lot of effort into your training and your racing, that's where you get gratification. And other people don't understand, how we have fun doing these things, because in this day and age, I think our lives are pretty easy. I mean, sure, we have hardships, but basically speaking, you know, our lives are more about what we want rather than what we need. And I think as athletes, you know, we understand this, and running helps us too, because running, if you want to be good, if you want to be your best, it's not easy, is it? You have to get out of your comfort zone. The only way to be better tomorrow than you were today is to do something you haven't done before. And as runners, we learn these things, but I think a lot of other people don't. Bridging the gap between this, you know, your desires and what you want, where you are and what you want. That people want it to happen quick and easy. You want to sit in a chair and play with your computer, your phone, and watch TV. And now we know that the chair is the biggest detriment to fitness and health. So as runners, we don't really like to just sit in a chair, do we? I mean, I think I can speak for you. I think you people in this room, I know your coach, and you know the fun of getting out and running in the woods and having fun. Cross country it's a privilege, isn't it? It's not that he's cracking the whip over you. You know it's fun to get out. I see you when we're driving up the roads, and I see you guys out there running, even during vacations and in the summer. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, really. I think you know these things.
Doris, why don't you tell them what it took you to get to that 68 Olympic team?
Oh, okay. It took me 12 years. But that's kind of a part of about some of this stuff. When I started running, I told you that I just ran on the beach and ran in the woods and had a good time. And when that man started the program for us, we didn't really have workouts. We went on Sundays after church, and I just did what the javelin throwers did, you know, what the other people did. And then I ran a quarter mile as hard as I could at the end of the workout. Okay, and so at home I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to be running the quarter mile and long jumping, I'll just, my dad measured out a quarter mile on the road, and in my saddle shoes, I ran down the road as hard as I could a quarter mile, rested till I could breathe, ran back again, and that's where it was. It didn't have equipment, didn't have running shoes, and every day I just got sick. I said, I'm quitting, this is horrible. And the next day I'd say, oh, it's not that bad. So finally my mother took me to the doctor and says, well, do you warm up? What's that? You know, I knew nothing about what I was doing. So after a year and a half of this was Olympic trials, and the people in Big Harbor raised the money for me and a couple other girls to get on the train, take a week going down to the Olympic trials on the train, sitting up on the train, getting out when the train stopped, running up and down the tracks a little bit. Now, is that how you prepare for your state meet? I don't think so. So, you know, and it was hot down there. Oh, and I have to add one other thing, because, you know, track is more than just learning about how to run a good race. So being from the Northwest, of course, there was one black in our high school, I think. But I knew nothing about segregation. And so at the meet in Houston, the black athletes, they couldn't go into any restaurants. So we said, they don't go in, we don't go in. So we all ate takeout. And that was good for me, you know, to expand my world a little bit here. So, yeah, and then because I placed well in that meet, I was second, I think. And the girl who beat me actually kind of knocked me out. She hit me in the stomach, and I passed out on the track and almost didn't finish the race. But I had a better time than her two going in. I was 5'3", and she's 6 foot tall, and had a good coach and a good team. Anyway, that's beside the point. But we became really good
You're not
friends.
going to name names today, are you?
No. So we got to go on the bus from Texas to Kansas to the training camp, and that was fun too, because on the bus trip, you know, the bus driver said, now you sit in the front seats. No, we're sitting in the back seat. Pat and I were sitting in the back seat. And I think there was a discus thrower and a high jumper. And the rest of the team was black, you know, because it was all sprints. So, no, we're going to sit in the front seats, the back seats. So that was, I can remember Wilma Rudolph. I don't think you remember her name, but she was still like the greatest sprinter. You know, she and Lily White, the best long jumper for 3 Olympics, and the best in the world, they're saying, be discreet. What does that mean? No, we're sitting in the back. So, and then when we got to the training camp, it was the first time I had coaching. And, you know, I told you what I'd been doing, running up and down the road a quarter mile 2 times. And then, you know, running in the woods, doing this stuff. So then the coach there, we were there for like I think 2 weeks, because hardly anybody had qualified, made the Olympic standard. So we had about 3 races. I guess we were there for longer than 2 weeks. So then I learned about intervals, and Willie White gave me a good pair of track shoes. This is why it took me 12 years to get to the Olympics. I felt terrible about not making that first Olympics in 1960 because I only missed it by 100th of a second.
Wow.
But in the long run, I look back, and there's a bright side to everything. And you'll probably learn this too, or you probably already have. There's been things that have happened to you that you didn't like. They were bad things. And then later on, you look back and you see maybe it wasn't all bad. So for me, it was good because, as my coach Ken Foreman said, if you get to Paris too early, you don't want to do anything after that. And what that means is, if you don't work and earn it, it doesn't mean anything. So then I knew how to train. I went back, went to Seattle Pacific. Ken Foreman became the coach my sophomore, junior year. And he was a good coach, and he also realized women needed to have college programs. So he was very instrumental in working toward that. And the way we started was we had the Falcon Track Club. We started the Falcon Track Club. And so the few girls around the area that wanted to be in college, we had girls on our team, 1 girl from UW, 1 from UPS, 1 from PLU, 2 from Washington State, and then 1 from Oregon. And then girls came from, we had a really great cross-country team. Girls came from all over the country to go to Seattle Pacific because they could get a good education and they could be on a club, even though it wasn't a team, college team. And so that's kind of how, we had our part in starting, and then with Title IX. Ken Foreman, he did a lot. He was willing to be on the lawsuits, like at Washington State, where they refused to have women sports. And so he did that, and I had opportunity after being in the Olympics to do things, to help, with Title IX and to get things for women. So,
And Title IX was like 1972-ish or so?
Yeah, the late 60s and into the 70s. Mm-hmm. And the first scholarships for women and first track programs, I think there might have been, I guess it was all sports. It was through an organization called AIW. Yeah, and that was in the 70s, which probably seems to you like a long time ago, but my friends who are coaching now were of that era. And so we had AIW, but then NCAA didn't like that competition, so they took over women's sports, which is kind of good and bad. But so that's kind of history, more than you probably want to know about it.
What was it like to be on the Olympic team the first time?
Oh, well, it was such a privilege to be on the Olympic team. And when you march into opening ceremonies in a USA uniform, and then you see the flag raised, and you hear your national anthem, and you see the Olympic flag raised, and all these things. It was really a privilege. And you have to stand out there for hours, so that's why some people don't go to opening ceremonies if there are races right away. But track is kind of at the end, so all of the track people, we did go to opening ceremonies. But it was so scary. I mean, I had run, this was in Mexico City, and I had run there the year before in the pre-Olympics. And so I felt at home in a way, but it was just like, I think I just want to go out of the tunnel and not run this race. I don't know if you'd have that feeling like when the gun goes off, what if my feet don't come off the track? But they always do. So when the gun goes off, you feel okay. And then it's like, don't go too fast. Like I always felt like my knees wanted to come too high. Just control yourself, run your pace. And it was good. I mentioned I had a little, at the end of that race, off the last turn, a girl kind of, same thing that happened to the American in the last Olympics, where somebody ticked her off at the end. And, when you lose your stride, then that's too late to lose your stride. But still, it was so hard not to do better. But on the other hand, I look back and I'm just so glad I was there. I realized what a privilege it was to be there, to have that opportunity. So it doesn't seem that bad when you think of all the people who probably would have liked to be there. Mm-hmm. And the same thing in 72, I had that experience, same thing there, that was really awful. But, I look back and I see that it was good. So, I would just encourage you, if you love to run, I think most of you are runners. Are there any shot putters or anybody in there? Okay, we
This
can talk
is
to
just a
running.
distance team.
Cross country especially.
I mean, I throw javelin.
Okay, do you run?
Yes.
Okay.
I got a problem, just, yes.
Okay, so we can say run. But I think our sport is special, and cross country and distance running are special because there's, you know, you do have to do a lot on your own, you know. Whereas in other sports and other events, you pretty much only do it as a team or with other people. And there is a lot left to us as individuals. So, but if we love to run, that's okay, isn't it? And if you have somebody to run with, if you have team people, that's really good. Well, I've been yammering on here, so you were gonna ask me questions.
Oh, you've almost answered them all, so.
Oh.
Do you guys, before I start asking you questions, do you have any questions? Do you have of Doris? Doris, let's just do some
Do you have one?
I had it on the top of my head, like early on, and I'm like trying to remember what it was.
We'll come back to you in a second, Joey. Let's just do some real quick ones. What were your first pair of spikes?
Adidas?
Okay? What
Yeah.
was it like to get your first USA uniform? Before you put it on, what was it like to hold that?
It was, I can't even tell you, it was so exciting. I mean, it just really was. It was so special. And they didn't fit very good, but that didn't matter. Because they were all made in men's sizes.
I was just gonna say
And
probably
there was
men's,
this
right?
one lady who came along with the machine and made them to fit us. And she was an Olympic coach. Yeah, she was an Olympic coach that year too. And then she came in following Olympics and always, even for the men, she made our suits fit because in those days they just had suits and you just took out of what they had. Yeah, but that was okay.
What was it like to work with Ken Foreman?
Oh, I was really lucky to have a very wise and special coach, kind of like you. He cared about you as people, and he had knowledge. Yeah, and he was willing to do the things, you know, to get out of his comfort zone and do things. He was the head of athletics and physical education at Seattle Pacific. He was a busy man, and so he still took time. In fact, he had coached a woman back in the 50s who actually qualified second for the Olympic team, but she wasn't chosen in those days. You know, you had to know people. If you were from the Northwest, you could forget it if you were a girl. And then when we started the Falcon Track Club, me and Ginny Husted were the two athletes, and she was a javelin thrower, and she placed second in the Olympic trials too and wasn't chosen one year. So again, just throw that in so you can know that things are better for you. But yeah, Ken was he was also a physiologist, had his doctorate in sports science, and so he knew more than feeding us donuts on the starting. Yeah.
He was an athlete's coach, like I'm sure you are. And we heard a story one time about him. He got to the race a little bit too late because of traffic, and his athletes didn't have a chance to warm up. So he faked having an elliptic fit on the track to stop the meet until his athletes were warming up and running.
Now, this was a character. He was a character. And also, he had been a great athlete. He was a gymnastics. In high school, he held the world record in the rope climb and the flying rings, which are no longer in the Olympics. But he didn't go to the Olympics because of Hitler's regime. The Olympics were canceled then. And he had another unusual experience. In 1980, the Olympics were canceled. Or, well, they were for us.
Right.
The U.S. didn't get to go. And he was the head coach. But he didn't get to go.
Was he ever able to go later?
Yeah, he went to the Seoul Olympics as an assistant coach. Yeah.
That's good. I'll have to bring him back on that. Joey?
Alright, so, what was the Olympics at in 1960?
Pardon?
Where was the Olympics at in 1960?
In Rome. Yeah, that would have been a good one. Yeah.
Jaren?
Is the jacket you're wearing, is that part of the uniform?
This is the '84 Olympic jacket, and that's where I was a coach. Yeah. So, I think Judy told me she thought I should wear an Olympic suit. That would be impressive.
Doris also coached a Norwegian athlete that was on the Norwegian Olympic team. So in 1988, when the Olympics were in Seoul, Korea, they asked Doris also to be a coach for the Norwegian Olympic team, and she coached her athlete there. Her name
Was
is
it Bente Moe?
Yeah.
I remember her.
Yeah.
Yep, so you've coached for the United States and
Norway.
Norway? How
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
But Doris is an old Norwegian. Her maiden name is Sivertsen.
Ah,
So, yeah. I know you have some Norwegians around this part of the country too.
yeah. JR?
Why are the flying rings?
Flying rings, okay, instead of just hanging on the rings, they did with motion, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
I think of like the flying bar, but it's
Mhm.
rings instead.
Joanna?
How did you transition from being an athlete yourself to coaching athletes?
Okay, well, after I graduated from SPU, I was a phys ed major, so that was area. And, there weren't that many women coaching. And, because I helped Ken coach the Falcon Track Club after I was still running, but I was coaching there. And then, I just kept on coaching. I taught junior high in Shoreline for 5 years, and then I was hired at SPU, and I coached there for 40 years. And so I did a lot of coaching, yeah. But I had really, having Ken for a coach and other people, I think I had a really good experience to have knowledge in all the events. Although my favorite were cross-country and running.
Doris, I'm Judy, I'm an acquaintance of hers. I've read that when you were living in Shoreline and coaching at SPU, your commute consisted of running from home to the campus and then
Oh.
working out with athletes.
Oh, when I taught in Shoreline, and I was living down by Green Lake,
Okay.
a couple times a week I'd run to school where I taught in Shoreline, and there were rules about women, So even though I was a phys ed teacher, I had to arrive on campus in a dress. So I had to, I remember I was carrying my running clothes, my clothes, I carried my dress in a bag. I changed at one of my athletes' houses, put my dress on, went in, changed into my PE clothes. And then finally, though, they said, you either have to put teaching here or you have to put running, because people are not going to vote for the levies if they see on television these people are doing childish things when they should be teaching. So that was another thing that's changed a bit.
What I remember reading is that when you did those runs and worked out with the students and athletes and then ran back, basically you were running a marathon each day.
Well, I only do that a couple times a week.
Oh, just a couple times a week.
Yeah.
My point taken.
Yeah.
Coach Cullen?
This race that we just watched, what was your plan going into it? It was your first time you've run indoors. Did you think, I'm going to go break the world record? Or what was, by going into that,
I didn't know
what was your
what
plan?
it was. I didn't really know anything. Well, we just, Ken was a good coach, so he said, we have to have a sensible pace here. So I've been training at 70 to 75 second laps. And so I had, planned to run that pace. And I was able to do it. If you train the way you want to race, sometimes it happens.
Let's see, in the back, Mario?
Did you prefer running indoors or outdoors?
Well, I don't know. I think I really liked indoors because I was short, and I don't know if you people have seen the tracks then. They were 11 laps to the mile, and they were very highly banked. And there are still tracks like that, but now there's so many of them that are like UW that are practically flat. But if you're short and you like those banks, and I did, I loved the turns. Because, I could go up high on the bank and you just came flying out of the turn. So I really liked those indoor tracks. But, outdoors was good too. But cross country was my favorite. I won the first 5 world championships that women could run. I liked running in the woods and running off the track. I don't want to say anything about the longer races on the track, but, I probably would never have run the 10K on the track, seriously, if I had the opportunity, because if I'm going to go 6 miles, I just assume run in the woods. So I probably would have wanted to run longer than 800, but, probably steeplechase would have been good. Yeah, if they'd had steeplechase, yeah.
Joey?
So I got to, first thing, SPU is Seattle Pacific, right?
Yes.
Right. And so the bank curves on indoor track is kind of like what a raceway would be for,
Like cars?
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So-
And they bank them like that to help the athletes not have to, turn such a sharp corner. So they put the bank, same reason that they do it for cars.
Because if you can imagine 180 yards for a lap, that's pretty tight running, and especially, 400 meters, I think would have been really, you need the bank to stay on the track. And it was fun to me, and I had really good luck with taller runners. Madeline Manning was a great one during my career, and indoors I beat her. She was about almost 6 feet tall and skinny, and I have scars on my hands for where I, running beside her, where the spikes would hit my hand, because she was legs up to here. Wow. We were good friends. She wasn't mean or anything. It's just that, so indoors was my thing. But we didn't have, there was only the meet in Vancouver and in Portland, so we didn't have very many indoor tracks. Nationals in New York, I guess, yeah.
Jeffrey?
A couple things. So when you won your 5 championships in a row, were the distances for those cross country races the same as they are now, or were they
No.
Yeah, they were.
The first one was 2.5 miles.
Okay.
And it gradually got longer. And when the race was on the continent in Europe, they always wanted them to be short. And there was kind of rebellion from the Canadians and Americans and even the English. So it gradually crept up to 5K. And then it got to 6K about 10 years ago. And now, just 2 years ago, they've changed the races, the international meet, the world championships, and that kind of thing. Now, the men who used to run further, they ran 12K, that's about 7 miles. And the women ran 6K, and now both the men and the women run 10K in the world championships. And they've changed the distance nationally for clubs, but colleges still run 10K for men, and I think 8K for women in this country.
Okay, so I've got 2 questions. One, what's the difference between an indoor track and an outdoor track besides the glaring obvious? The bank.
Pardon?
What's the difference in distance between an indoor track and an outdoor track?
Well, in my day, the outdoor tracks were dirt, and there were no dirt indoor tracks. Now the indoor tracks have pretty good surfaces. Have any of you run indoors at UW? Okay, so that's a really nice surface. And there's no wind, and the temperature's nice, so that's really ideal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, but indoors still, the times are not as fast as outdoors. Because on the bigger track, it's just easier to hold a faster pace. So that's primarily the difference, is just the size of the track.
The second question I had is how many miles is a 10K?
The 10K is 6.2, a little over 6.2, yeah.
Jeffrey?
So what was your fastest 5K time?
My fastest 5K was right around 15. I'm sure I could have gone under if I'd had a chance to race at that distance on the track. But in cross country, I actually think that my cross country times were almost better than my track times, but we didn't have that, the longer races there, so I can't really compare.
Since we're on times, how about your fastest, I think some of them know this, how about your fastest 400? Was it faster than 60 seconds?
Yeah.
How fast did you run?
I think
About
55, it's 55 something. So that doesn't put me in the range to be a good 800 runner, because, even in my day, the people who were good 800 runners could run around 52, 53. So I really had the hot foot it the whole way. Yeah.
And your best 800?
2:01.9. And I think it still puts me on the top. Am I still in the top 10?
Yeah, when we go to
No,
this college
not now.
race today and watch,
Yeah.
she still posts her time, still ranks in the top 8 or 10.
As of this last year, I'm not up there anymore. No,
Best 1500?
I can't remember. It's around 4:12, something like that.
You ran a marathon, I think, once.
I ran 3 marathons. Well, I raced 2 marathons and ran one other one. But at the time, training for the 800, because the one I ran in Vancouver, that's a funny experience too, I have to tell you. These are my good stories, whether you want to hear them or not. The girls that I was coaching at SPU wanted to run a marathon, the distance runners wanted to run a marathon, before they graduated. And but Ken, of course, our track head coach didn't want them to run a marathon before college nationals. So that left us one weekend that they could do this. So we ran the Vancouver Marathon. It was a wonderful one because it was Lionsgate, and it was around, if you've ever been to Vancouver, it's, around the park.
Stanley Park.
Stanley Park, yeah, so we could even get off the pavement a little bit. So we ran it then, but our national AU track meet was a couple weeks later, and so, that 800. So I can't say that I was training for a marathon at that time, but I had a pretty good base from cross country.
Do you remember how fast you ran on 800 training for the marathon?
My marathon time was,
2:47.
yeah.
And
2:47.
Was my marathon.
and you were running, and you were training for the 800 though?
Yeah.
She
And then-
broke the Canadian women's record by 10 minutes that day.
And then I ran the New York Marathon, I was second, and here's where I get back into the gender thing. And also time. If you took second in the New York Marathon today, you'd be riding high economically. And I got my way paid to the race. And I was lucky to get second because, if that was an 800, that would work okay. But I was coaching and teaching, and I always put my coaching and teaching first. So I had a night class the night before and workouts. So I got on the plane at 11 o'clock at night, got there, 2 in the morning, got up at 5 in the morning, took the bus to the start of the marathon. And I also was having shoulder surgery when I got back to So I to this day, I still believe I might have beaten Nikki because.
And Mickey set a world record.
Yeah,
today,
she
so
did, yeah.
that's the
But, all of us always think that, what if, we could have done better if, but I was happy with it. And my third one was, the marathon trials for the Olympics, when they finally had it. And, since I was an Olympic coach, the Olympic staff was the staff for I think it was like the World University Games. And so they had a meet in Canada, Canada. They had a meet in Canada, and while we're up there, they said, we want you to come and run in this pre-trials race in Olympian. And so it was like the day that we would get back from Canada. So Ralph said no, and I said, well, I'll drop out if I hurt. So it was okay though, it was a fun marathon. But the thing I didn't like about it was, I didn't want to run any marathons over 3 hours. And I think I ran 3:01, but I ran with the other girls of my vintage. One was pregnant, none of us were, so we were having fun. So I really raced 2 marathons and ran the other one, 3.
You got to travel the world.
I did.
Because of your running. Where was your favorite place in the world to run?
Let's see.
Either to just run or race, either one.
Oh, well, I'd always have to say Norway and Switzerland because I like those kind of countries and those kind of races. But my best cross-country race was probably in Wales. Yeah, it was.
What was your favorite, what was your
Oh, no, I
favorite?
have to tell you one other one.
Okay.
The last time I went, it was in Spain. And this course was awesome. It was really awesome. This is a place where they were going to have a short race. And so the coaches rebuilt from the other countries, and it was longer. You might have even seen a picture of this race. The guy from England won it, and I won the women's. And again, the weather. In Spain, San Sebastian, had snow on the palm trees, very unusual, windy. It was such awful weather, they canceled the opening ceremonies. And the mud was, we had to go up some real steep hills in a cow pasture, and the mud was this deep. And it was I think that's why I won it, because it was tough. It was really tough. And there was this little bridge that was about from here to here. And they cut it in half. So we ran up the bridge, and then we had to leap. And it was right near the finish, well, like a quarter mile from the finish. And we were tired. And that's really where I won it, I think, was right there. Yeah. So that might have been my favorite race. Yeah.
With all the obstacles you had to overcome.
Yeah. But I have to tell you also, another girl on our team who was really a cross-country skier, a good one, she was in the Olympics in cross-country skiing. She was on this team too. In fact, 4 of the 6 girls on that U.S. team were from our team. And Trina was in the World Cross-Country championship of cross-country skiing in Sweden the week before. So she's run skiing in Sweden, and then she comes down to Spain. She didn't have her best race, but she was tough. And our team did good. I think we didn't win though. We were second, I think, that year. Yeah. But you know, it's fun to be a distance runner.
Johanna.
What from your like childhood and growing up, and what like influences maybe family contributed to your resiliency?
Well, I might have inherited some good genes. I don't know, because my parents didn't have a chance to be athletes. And you know, at the time I was born was right when life was tough, you know, because of the war. I mean, you could hardly, there were a lot of things that we didn't have as kids. And I credit that to part of it too. I'm really glad that I started life at a time when things were tough. I mean, you know, now people have their hand out. They think they're entitled. And at that time, people didn't have those attitudes. It was like they wouldn't take charity. You know, they worked for what they got. But most of us were farmers or had a garden, and we had food, you know, something. But I'm really glad that I started out when life is hard, because I think that when you have to work for what you get, it pays off. And my dad he didn't really want me to be running. He said, if you've got so much energy, you can just stay here and work more on the farm. But he graduated, he said, no, it's okay, you can do it. But so they were okay with that, but they weren't, you know, they didn't scrounge up the money to go to Mexico or anything, partly because they couldn't. But yeah, I think though that I probably inherited some good genes, because you know, in this day and age, you don't just decide you want to be a shot putter or a runner or whatever and go out and win the Olympics, you know, because you thought you wanted to and you worked. You have to have something going for you. So I would say that, you know, for all of us in this room, probably we inherited something, but it probably comes from inheritance, and it comes from what your parents do for you as being a person that has the values to be a good athlete. And that's important, because if you have the opportunity to be an athlete, that can make so much difference in your life. People who don't have the opportunity to be physically fit, as we do, I mean, you're not going to be a cross-country runner if you aren't fit, are you? You know, you might get by on the sprints. You want to do the sprints. But, you know, but there it's pretty much more hard. But, you know, so I would say that where you grow up can make a difference. You know, if you did work that helped you to be strong and gave you the opportunity to be out and about, I think that really, I would credit that. Yeah.
Chair.
What is the race you are most proud of?
The race I'm most proud of, track would probably be maybe that indoor mile, all over. I think it was the cross country. The first one especially, you know, to be the first one to do it. There were other races that were, you know, good too, but those stand out in my mind. Yeah.
We'll do maybe a couple more, Jeffrey.
How many different countries do you think you got to visit during your running career?
I don't know, but quite a few. I didn't get to go to all though, because you know, we didn't really go to. There were some countries you didn't go to then. I qualified for a team that ran in China, but I was injured, and I chose not to go. And I'm still glad I did that, because you know, when I was a coach, there was one athlete on the team that knew she wasn't going to be able to run, and she went anyway. And I don't feel like that was a good choice. But not going to China was kind of hard, because then hardly anybody could go to China. So I think there's a lot of African countries that I went to them as a coach more than an athlete. South Africa was really special. A lot of places in Europe. Yeah, I think I was privileged to go to quite a few. Yeah.
Chair. I'm sorry, Julie.
So, what year was that? Well, chance to not at where you lost the chance to go to China. What year was that?
I don't remember. It was, let's see. I can't remember.
Any other questions? Doris, this is you've given us quite a gift today. Not just today, but your example of what you did for not only women, but helping men be the best that they could be when you coached them as well, and opening the doors for our girls. And thanks for taking time out of your day. I know that you're still busy.
Do you have a little more time?
We have a couple more minutes, yeah.
Okay,
Well, we've
because-
got as much time as you've got.
I had this eye surgery and I can't read very well, and I
Okay.
can't, but there's just a couple of things, I'd like to say that the things that you get out of running, and, to be the best runner you can be is important, but that also probably tells you what you are as a person. And I'd just like to just quickly go through a couple of other things that, as far as coaching, I feel like passing on what I've experienced and using God's gift to me is probably the thing that I feel is my best blessing, to use the gifts that you have. And if you love to run, and if that's your gift, I would say go for it. And as long as you enjoy it, you'll keep doing it, and things will come to you. Now let's see. Take your opportunities. It's really easy to say, oh, I don't feel like really putting myself into this race, or I don't feel like doing this or that. But almost always when you miss an opportunity, whether it's running or something else, you look back and you say, I should have done it. So whenever in doubt, always take your opportunities, because that's where things come to your life that you just, you won't know what you missed if you don't do them. There's a big difference between being good and being great. There's a difference between existence and excellence. There's a difference between routine and reward. So you want to know the difference between how good it is to give and not just get. You probably already have experienced this. You find when you have a chance to share or to help people, or you can help people on your team, that's almost one of the big rewards rather than a sacrifice, And that also includes like what one of our past great distance runners always said, honor your competitors with your best effort. And you know who gains the most from that when you do it? You do. Yeah. So, achieving the questionable, go for it. Don't stick to your comfort zone. And sometimes that means that you'll go beyond what you should have done. And I think especially as you become more of an elite athlete, this is a hard decision, but even in training, to know when you shouldn't do too much. It's kind of like being on the fence, not doing too much, but doing enough. And it's hard to make those decisions, and that's where it's good to have a good coach like you do, a person who's got your best interest. But you want to be on the fence. You always want to be up there, taking some chances. And you probably already know that the races that you learn the most from aren't necessarily the ones that you won. When you wish you would have done things different, what that really means is, I know what I'm going to do next time. I know what I'm going to do to prepare. And if things always come easy and you always win, you don't ever reach the goals that you could, because you didn't have to get out of your comfort zone. So you want to be in a place where you don't always get what you want. On the other hand, my coach always said, it is what it is. You let past things go, just learn from them, and you're only going to get what you expect. So expect the best and go for it. Let's see. You've got to have goals, because, let's see, you don't always get what you want, but goals will take you to places that you wouldn't have gone if you didn't have them. And that's inside yourself as well as outside. And I think you find that the journey is more important than the destination. The goals mainly, I don't know, maybe you can all remember your times. I don't even remember my times. What I remember mostly are the experiences, and especially when you get old like me, then you look back and you realize it's the journey. And so you want to make every day your best day, because that adds up to the journey. And so if you're always true to yourself and give your best, in the end that really pays off. So these are just some things I wanted to say, and you probably already know them. It's the little things that make the difference, showing up every day for workout, putting yourself into it, getting used to doing that. The little things. Almost always, especially the better you get, it's going to be small things that make the difference, It's not whether you run 5 quarters instead of 4. It's like, what do you do in the middle of that quarter? Yeah, and you always want to be seeking. Oh,
Sorry.
thank you. Ralph says, shut up, it's time to So, anyway, those are just things that I would want to leave with you. You know, that maybe it doesn't make sense now, but it will later, and if it does make sense now, it'll do you good.
Yeah, it definitely will. You guys, what do you think?
You might already know this from reading about people, because you have good knowledge now, but out of all the good athletes I've known, hardly any of them succeeded because it was easy. Most of them succeeded because it was impossible. Madeline Manning had an incurable disease and wasn't supposed to live. She's the only woman in our country who's won Olympics, 800 Olympics. Wilma Rudolph was a great sprinter. She had polio, couldn't walk till she was 8. And you can, another one, what was his name?
Glenn Cunningham?
Glenn Cunningham. Did they know about him?
Probably not.
He was burned over almost his whole body and shouldn't have lived. And he was a great athlete. And you can just, you know, you can just go through the list of this. When I was little, I had arthritis and I was supposed to be active. And so I think it's when you say, okay, it can't be done, okay, I want to get out there and give it a try, you know. But you just need to know that. So on the days when you have something that doesn't feel good, think, okay, I can't feel sorry for myself. Look what these people do. Anything that, you know, helps to lift you up is good. But knowing that, I just think if you read the histories of good athletes, you'll find hardly any of them did it because it was easy. Yeah. I leave you with that.
Well, thank you for your wisdom. Would you be kind enough to give us one more thing? Could we get a group picture with you up here? So if you guys could come up, I'll put Doris and welcome on the.
Maybe that's why he left.
He's like, oh, I gotta get out of here.
He's intimidated.
My ego will be bursted.
Yeah.
Right? Just really
So let's make a splash of Doris kind of right in the front there.
Yes.
What?
You need a couch?
Push it to the light, it'll be okay.
I think it's going to work.
That is so.
That's awesome. Oh, wow.
Coach, you gonna get in on this, or?
Sure, I will.
Oh, yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, still recording.
Thank you.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, when is your home track meet?
We have one on April 27th.
Okay.
That's a Saturday.
Okay.
And then we host district on May 12th.
Oh, that was our athletic. Is yours good? Or is this coach? Just dump it out. Call him good. Take it away.
You are welcome.
Bring him good.
Man, we have some cookies.
12
I was gonna do mac and cheese. The IGA. There's an IGA.
That's where you'll be.
I can't believe I didn't know that they had really good Thai food. That actually really makes me mad. It's really good.
You're about to have a whole just time.
Making up for lost time.
Yeah. This is for the other time I was here.
Wait, so it's just in that strip mall or is it in the grocery store?
Yeah.
But it's really good.
Well, to be honest, we don't often trust Thai food that's in a grocery store.